Dear students, so today we are going to revise lesson number 3, periodic classification of elements, right? So we are going to classify the elements because elements are more in number, so that in order to study the properties we have to classify the element, then the process will be easy. So studying 118 elements will take a longer period, so that in order to reduce the time consumption we are classifying the elements. So many scientists tried different types of classifications, so one by one we will discuss. First, Lavoisier's classification. So Lavoisier had a very limited number of elements during his lifetime, only 23 elements. So he had only 23 elements. Based on the properties, he classified the 23 elements into 4 major groups or 4 major categories. They are acid making elements like sulfur or phosphorus. Number 2, gas like elements based on the physical state. Gas like elements like hydrogen or oxygen and so on. Then third one, metallic elements. Some elements are present in the form of solid metals like copper, nickel, iron, cobalt and so on. Then earthy elements means elements present in the form of compounds like calcium oxide or magnesium oxide and so on. So Lavoisier had a very limited number of elements, around 23. He classified the elements into 4 major groups: acid making elements, gas like elements, metallic elements and earthy elements. Next classification, Dufour's classification. Dufour classified the element based on the law of triad. So he proposed law of triad. Based on that, he constituted groups. He constituted group of elements. So he studied the properties of elements. Then after that, he constituted a group of element using 3 elements. For example, take lithium, sodium, potassium. Right? So he constructed a triad. He called this group as a triad. A tri represents 3. So 3 elements are made as a group. He called it as a triad because the group obeys law of triad. So we have to know what is law of triad. Law of triad means the average atomic mass of first and third element. What is the first and third element? Lithium and potassium. First element is lithium, third element is potassium. So when we take average value for the atomic mass, the atomic mass of lithium is 7, for potassium 39, we obtained average value 23. So now the average value obtained from the first and third element in a group, the value is approximately equal to the average atomic mass of the middle element. So this is called law of triad. So what is law of triad? The atomic mass of the middle element is approximately equal to the average atomic mass of remaining 2 elements in the group. So this is called the law of triad. If a group is obeying the law of triad, we call the group as what? Triads. Okay. So Dufour's classification is based on law of triad. Atomic mass of the middle element will be approximately equal to the average atomic mass of the remaining 2 elements in the group. So he called the group as a triad. He constituted only 3 triads: lithium, sodium, potassium, chlorine, bromine, iodine and calcium, strontium, barium. So he constituted only 3 triads. He had more elements, but law of triads were obeyed by 3 groups only. Okay, so this is the drawback of Dufour's classification. Next one, AEB de Chancotais classification. So Chancotais classified the elements based on the atomic weight. Right? So he arranged the elements in the increasing order of atomic weight. You can observe it: hydrogen, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. The elements are arranged in the increasing order of atomic weight. Now all these elements are arranged in a cylindrical model. Okay, so model is cylindrical model. He arranged the elements in a helix form, so like this. So in the cylinder he arranged the elements in a helical form. Okay, for one helix he arranged 16 elements. So D. Chan-Katais arranged the elements in the increasing order of atomic weight as a helix in a cylinder. For one complete helix, 16 elements were placed in the increasing order of atomic weight. So after that, after arranging the elements in the helical form, we can draw the vertical line. So like this. When we draw the vertical line in the cylinder, the elements present in the vertical line are assumed to have same chemical property. There is a major breakthrough. If you draw a vertical line in the cylinder, the elements which are aligning in that line are assumed to have same chemical property. So this is D. Chan-Katais classification. So three classifications we have completed. Number 1, Lavoisier's classification. Number 2, Dufour's classification. Number 3, D. Chan-Katais classification. 4, we move into the Newland's classification. He classified the elements based on law of octaves. What is the meaning of oct? Oct means 8. So he observed the musical notes, right? When we observe the musical notes, sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. First letter and the 8th letter resembles. First letter sa, 8th letter sa. So like musical notes, when we arrange the elements in the increasing order of atomic weight, first element will resemble with 8th element. So this is called a law of octaves. What is law of octave? When we arrange the elements in the increasing order of atomic mass, like 7, 9, 11, 12, 14 like that, we arrange the elements in the increasing order of atomic mass. First element and 8th element, like lithium and sodium, will have same properties, and beryllium, magnesium will have same property. Boron, aluminum will have same property. So this is called a law of octave. So this is called a Newland's classification. Now what is the drawback of Newland's classification? He arranged only limited number of elements. So up to calcium he arranged in the form of a periodic table, right? So he constructed a table. He arranged up to calcium. So other elements could not be placed. So this is first drawback. Second drawback, noble gases were not included in the series. Lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. What is the next element? Neon. So noble gases were not discovered during the lifetime of Newland. So he left noble gases. So when we include noble gas, first letter will resemble with the 9th letter. First element will resemble with 9th element. Okay. So law of octave is proved as a wrong concept. So when we include the noble gases like neon, argon, krypton, means first element and the 9th element will have the same property. So this is not law of octave. So the total classification is a wrong one. Next one, Lothar Meyer. Lothar Meyer and Mendeleev, both of them were working in the same period. So individually they were working in the same time, but Mendeleev proposed his classification first. Lothar Meyer correlated the physical properties of elements with atomic mass. So for each atom there is an atomic mass. He correlated the physical properties like melting point, boiling point, density, refractive index, atomic volume. The physical properties are correlated with the atomic mass. So he drew a graph between the atomic volume and atomic mass of elements. Atomic volume is taken in the y-axis, atomic mass is taken in the x-axis. So from this graph he said that atomic mass is the fundamental property for the classification of element. When atomic mass changes, property will be changed. So this is the conclusion of Lothar Meyer. Next, Mendeleev. Mendeleev also thought that atomic mass should be the fundamental property. So he proposed a periodic law. We call it as Mendeleev periodic law. 2 more question. Physical and chemical properties of elements are periodic functions of their atomic weight or atomic mass. When atomic mass changes, properties will be changed. So this is called the Mendeleev periodic law. Based on the Mendeleev periodic law, he arranged a periodic table. So this is called the Mendeleev periodic table. So he studied the properties of elements, how the elements are combining with oxygen and hydrogen. So he took only two standard elements, hydrogen and oxygen. He observed what type of oxide or hydrides formed. Okay, so he did many chemical reactions. How lithium is combining with oxygen and hydrogen, how sodium is combining with oxygen and hydrogen. Based on that, he studied chemical properties. Okay, then after studying the chemical property, he arranged the elements in the increasing order of atomic weight and chemical property. So elements will be arranged in the increasing order of atomic weight. Then elements with similar chemical properties will be arranged in a group, so that he got a periodic table. So first periodic table proposed by the scientist is Mendeleev. Even though it has many drawbacks, the first periodic table was proposed by Mendeleev. So he arranged the elements in the increasing order of atomic mass. Then elements with similar chemical properties will be arranged in a group. So he obtained a periodic table. Next, the main advantage of Mendeleev's periodic table is when he was arranging the elements in the periodic table, he left some blank spaces because he had a limited number of elements. During his lifetime, he had only 70 elements. So he left some blank spaces. Right? Why he left some empty spaces in the periodic table? That element was not discovered during his lifetime, so that he left. For example, below aluminium is placed in the periodic table. Below aluminium, he left a blank space, and below silicon, he left a blank space because both the elements have to be discovered later, right? So he left empty spaces in the periodic table. He thought that that element will be discovered later. So he gave temporary name and he predicted the physical properties. This is a major advantage of Mendeleev's periodic table. So he gave tentative name. Below aluminium, an element should be discovered. So he called the element as Eka aluminium. Below silicon, he left a blank space. He thought that one element will be discovered later. So he called it as Eka silicon. And he predicted the properties like atomic weight, density, melting point, what type of oxide chloride is formed. So physical properties were discovered by or predicted by Mendeleev. Later, we discovered both the elements. So below aluminium, he left an empty space. We discovered that element as gallium. And below silicon, he left an empty space. We discovered that element which is called as germanium. So we calculated the physical properties. For gallium and germanium, we calculated the physical properties. Now, theoretical value predicted by the Mendeleev and the exact value obtained, both are approximately equal. So this is the major advantage. So while arranging the elements in the Mendeleev periodic table, he left blank spaces. He gave tentative name and physical properties. So later we discovered that element properties were calculated and discovered. So both the values are approximately equal. Okay. Next, disadvantages of Mendeleev periodic table means some elements were not arranged properly because we have to arrange the elements in the increasing order of atomic weight. When we consider chemical properties, some elements are not arranged properly. Example, tellurium and iodine. Okay. Tellurium having atomic mass 127.6, iodine 127. So which should come first? Iodine should come first, but in Mendeleev periodic table, tellurium comes first. This is a drawback. The same way, we can take cobalt and nickel. Atomic mass is less for nickel. Nickel should come first, but based on the chemical property, cobalt comes first. So these are the disadvantages of Mendeleev periodic table. Next, Moseley. So Moseley is a scientist who discovered atomic number. What he did is he took high-speed electrons. So high-speed electrons are allowed to pass or allowed to strike elements. So when the high-speed electrons are striking the elements, X-rays were emitted. He observed the frequency of X-rays. So when electrons are bombarding the elements, X-rays were emitted. the frequency or the square root of frequency of X-rays were calculated by the Moseley. Then he drew a graph. So square root of frequency of X-rays which are coming out from the element is taken in y-axis. Atomic number is nothing but number of proton present within the nucleus or number of electrons present outside the nucleus for an atom. So atomic number is taken in the x-axis. So for each element, square root of frequency of X-ray and the corresponding atomic number of that element was taken, and he had drawn a graph. He obtained a straight line. So this indicates which should be the fundamental property, atomic number. We should not consider atomic weight as the fundamental property to classify the elements. We have to take atomic weight or atomic mass as a fundamental property. So this is the conclusion from Moseley's experiment or work. Atomic number should be considered for arranging the elements in periodic table. Based on that, modern periodic law was proposed. So this is properties of elements are periodic functions of their atomic numbers. Properties will be changed when atomic number changes for the elements. So based on modern periodic law, we have constructed a modern periodic table. Now the modern periodic table has totally 18 vertical columns. Vertical columns are called what? Groups. Group number 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. 18 groups present. 18 vertical columns, totally 18 groups. Horizontal rows, 7 horizontal rows totally. Horizontal rows is called what? Periods. So totally 7 periods or 7 horizontal rows. So this is modern periodic table. So in modern periodic table, we have 4 block of elements. Okay. So this is called S block element. Group number 1 and 2 S block element. Group number 13 to 18 P block elements. Group number 3 to 12 D block or transition element. Then lanthanides and actinides are called F block elements or inner transition elements. Okay. So modern periodic table has 18 groups and 7 periods. Modern periodic table has 4 major blocks: S block, P block, D block, F block. S block elements means outermost orbital S orbital. P block, outermost orbital P orbital. D block are transition element, outermost orbital D orbital. F block element are inner transition element means outermost orbital F orbital. Okay. Then S and P orbitals are collectively known as normal elements or representative elements or main group elements. Group number 1, 2, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So totally 8 group of elements. S block and P block, total 8 group of elements are collectively known as representative elements, main group elements or normal elements. Then nomenclature for the elements with atomic number more than 100. So when we take elements with atomic number more than 100, UPOC has to give the permanent name. For an element, UPOC will authenticate and the UPOC will give the permanent name. So this will take a time, 1 year or 2 year, right? So until getting a permanent name, we can follow a temporary name. So after discovering or preparing an element with atomic number more than 100, until getting a permanent name, we can follow a temporary name. So temporary name can be given based on certain rules. So UPOC has given certain rules to give tentative name for elements with atomic number more than 100. So what is the first rule? Use the root words. So we have root words. For each number, we have root words. Based on the root words, we can write name for the element. Rule number 2. The name should be ended with IUM. Okay. Name of the element should be ended with IUM. Then third rule, if we connect 2 root words like ENN and NIL. ENN is a root word of what? Number 9. ENN is the root word of number 9. NIL is the root word of 0. So if we connect these two, ENN means the last N will be striked out. Instead of ENN, we can write EN. So EN plus NIL, NL, right? In the same way, if we connect by with IUM, so name should be entered with IUM. If we join two words BI plus IUM, we can remove I from this by. So that will be written as BIUM. It will not be written as what? BIIUM will not be written. That will be written as BIUM. TRIUM, trium, not TRIIUM. Okay, so this is third rule. So when we join some root words or root word with IUM, if two letters are coming, 2N or 2I comes, means one will be striked out. Number 4, symbol can also be denoted. For elements, symbol will be written with the help of the root words. For example, if you are connecting three words, un, nil, bm, un, nil, by means from the three root words un, nil, by, three words we are connecting, root words. From the first letter you can write symbol. Okay, UNB, that is a symbol for the element. Okay, so all this we have completed already in regular classes, so that I am going fast now. So what is the UPAC first rule? You have to follow the root word. Next, name should be ended with IUM. Rule number 3, when we connect two root words like ENN and NIL, one N will be striked out in the root word ENN. Then number 4, symbol can be written for the element with the help of root word. First letter of root word will be taken. We will write the symbol of the element. So up to 118, the UPAC name is given along with the symbol. So temporary name and a temporary symbol. Take element with atomic number 101. What is the root word for 1? 1 means un, 0, nil, 1, un. Okay, so un, nil, un. We connect the three root words un, nil, un. Name should be ended with IUM. So this is called un, nil, unium. From the three root words un, nil, un, take first letters U, N, U. So this is a symbol. Okay. Then 102, un, nil, by. Root words are what? Un, nil, by. Name will be ended with IUM. So this is called un, nil, bm. First three letters U, N, B. So in the same way, you can write the name for remaining elements. So anil trium, anil quadrium, anil pentium, anil hexium, anil septium, anil octium, like that. For all 118 elements, you can write UPAC name. Then grouping of elements based on electronic configuration. How much elements present in each period first, that can be written. So for that we have to know what is the available orbital in the each period. So when we take first period, the available orbital is 1s orbital. Okay, the available orbital in the first period is 1s orbital. So 1s orbital electron, so that number of elements 2. Second period has available orbitals 2s and 2p. Totally 8 electrons can be accommodated. 2s orbital 2, 2px2, 2py2, 2pz2. So totally 2p orbital can accommodate 6 electron, isn't it? So 2s orbital can accommodate 2 electron, 2p orbital can accommodate 6 electron. Overall 8 electrons can be present. So 8 elements will be in the second period. So first period has only 2 elements, so that is shortest period. Second period has 8 elements, this is a short period. Okay, then third period has available orbitals 3s and 3p. As usual, s orbital can accommodate 2, p orbital can accommodate 6. Overall 8 electrons can be accommodated. So number of elements in the third period 8. So this is also short period. Then fourth period has available orbitals 4s, 3d, 4p. S orbital can accommodate 2, d orbital can accommodate 10, p orbital can accommodate 8, because p orbital is of 3 types, px, py, pz. D orbital is of 5 types, each orbital can accommodate 2. So overall 18 electrons can be accommodated. So 18 elements will be in the fourth period. So this is called long period. Fifth period has available orbitals 5s, 4d and 5p. So 18 electrons can be present. So number of elements 18. So this is also a long period. Then sixth period has available orbitals 6s, 4f, then 5d and 6p. So s orbital can accommodate 2, f orbital can accommodate 14, d orbital can accommodate 10, p orbital can accommodate 6. 2 plus 14 plus 10 plus 6, totally 32 electrons can be present. So 32 elements will be in the sixth period. So this is the longest period. The same for seventh period. Available orbitals 7s, 5f, 6d, 7p. Totally 32 electrons can be present. So number of elements in the seventh period 32. So this is also longest period. Then, as we told already, periodic table has 4 blocks: S block, P block, D block, F block. Right? Configuration of each one is given. What is the electronic configuration of each one? And the properties have given in the book. S block elements means usually they are soft metals. They are electropositive in nature. Easily they lose the electron to form ionic compounds. P block elements means they are non-metals. They will have the tendency of accepting the electron. So electron affinity, electronegativity, all will be more for P block elements. So non-metals will form all type of compound, a covalent bond as well as ionic bond, all will be formed. The elements which are closer to noble gas will form ionic bond. For example, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, or oxygen, they are all forming ionic bond. Then D block elements means group number 3 to 12, they are called metals, right? They are metals, they will have metallic bonding. Next, F block elements means inner transition element. From the transition element, we have selected 28 elements based on the property. They are all radioactive in nature and lifetime is very less. Okay, so these are called the lanthanoids as well as actinoids. For each group, electronic configuration is given, right? Next, variation of properties. Some physical properties are changing in the modern periodic table. When we move from left to right as well as top to bottom, physical properties are changing. So we are going to discuss the periodicity in properties. Periodicity means what? Changing the property at regular interval. So periodicity in properties are going to be discussed. What are the physical properties we consider? Atomic radius, ionic radius, ionization energy or potential, electron gain enthalpy or electron affinity, and electronegativity. So we consider 5 properties. Okay. First, atomic radius. Atomic radius is nothing but the distance between the center of the nucleus and the valence electron. So here valence electron is there, right? So the distance between the center of the nucleus and the valence electron is called atomic radius. Atomic radius cannot be calculated directly because except noble gases, remaining atoms are unstable. They won't present as a single atom. If you take hydrogen, oxygen, single atom will not exist. So except noble gases, remaining atoms unstable. So directly we cannot calculate atomic radius. So that we are going to calculate covalent radius. If you take hydrogen, always it will exist in the form of H2 molecule. Chlorine will exist in the form of Cl2 molecule. Okay. So for calculating the radius, first we are going to measure the distance between the nucleus. This is first atom, second atom. Both are similar. This is homonuclear diatomic molecule. It may be oxygen or nitrogen, hydrogen, fluorine, chlorine, whatever it may be. Both the atoms will be similar. Between the nucleus, what is the distance? It is called internuclear distance. Now divide the internuclear distance by 2, you will get what? Radius. So radius of an atom can be calculated with the help of internuclear distance. Divide the internuclear distance by 2, you will get radius. Further, we can take chlorine, right? So chlorine always exists in the form of Cl2 molecule. Internuclear distance is 198 picometer. 198 picometer means 1.98 angstrom. Okay, what is the value? 1.98 angstrom. So internuclear distance D is equal to what? Radius of First chlorine, radius of second chlorine. So radius of first chlorine, radius of second chlorine. When we connect these two, we get internuclear distance. So this is a formula. Internuclear distance is equal to radius of first atom, radius of second atom. So R plus R is nothing but R, 2R. R plus R, 2R. So internuclear distance can be divided by 2 to calculate radius. So we can calculate the radius of chlorine by dividing internuclear distance by 2. So 1.98 angstrom divided by 2, we get 0.99 angstrom. This is the radius of chlorine atom. Now we should not say this is atomic radius. This is called the covalent radius because chlorine is existing in the form of chlorine molecule. This is covalent molecule. So the radius is covalent radius. And one more question is, always covalent radius is lesser than atomic radius because when it is present in the form of covalent molecule, size will be somewhat decreased, right? So due to the interactions between the nucleus and outermost cell, size will be reduced. So comparing the atomic radius, covalent radius value will be slightly lesser. So in the previous cases, we completed homonuclear diatomic molecules. If you take heteronuclear diatomic molecules means, what is the formula? For example, hydrogen fluoride or hydrochloric acid. What is the formula to calculate radius? This is the formula, right? So using this formula, we can calculate the radius of an atom if it is existing as heteronuclear diatomic molecule. Next, metallic radius. So the same definition. Metallic atoms are joined together by means of metallic bond. So metallic atoms are closely packed in the metal crystal lattice, right? So between the atoms, internuclear distance will be there. So we divide the internuclear distance by 2, we get metallic radius. So distance, half the distance between the adjacent atoms in a metallic crystal is called what? Metallic radius. So for that we can take a copper. So when you take copper metal, internuclear distance between the copper atom is 2.56 angstrom. We divide it by 2, we get radius of metallic copper as 1.28 angstrom. Then variation of atomic radius in periods as well as groups. So from left to right in a period, atomic radius gradually decreases. For that we can take second period, right? From lithium to neon, atomic radius gradually decreases. 167, 112, 87, 67, 56, 48, 38. So gradually atomic radius or size decreases. This is mainly due to electrons are added in the same cell. When we move from lithium to beryllium, it has one more extra electron. Lithium has only 3 electron, atomic number 3, only 3 electron. Beryllium has atomic number 4, so it has 4 electron. So one more electron in the beryllium is added in the same valence cell, second cell. Then if you take carbon, atomic number 6, 6 electrons. So the extra electrons are added in the same cell. So when extra electrons are added in the same cell, when we move from left to right, attraction between the proton and the outermost electron will be more. Okay. So electrons are added in the same cell means shielding effect is less. Effective nuclear charge increases. Right? Effective nuclear charge means what? Nuclear charge experienced by the last electron, outermost valence electron. So left to right electrons are added in the same cell. So shielding effect or screening effect is not a predominant one. Which is predominant? Effective nuclear charge. Left to right effective nuclear charge increases. Attraction between the proton and electron is more. So automatically size decreases from left to right. Next, 2 more questions. What is effective nuclear charge? The net nuclear charge experienced by the valence electron is called effective nuclear charge. So which is disturbing this attraction? Proton present in the nucleus is attracting the outermost electron. This attraction is disturbed by the inner electrons, isn't it? So it is called shielding effect. Shielding effect is nothing but the inner electrons are disturbing, shielding or screening the attraction between the proton and the outermost electron. It's called the shielding effect. So When we remove the shielding effect, the remaining nuclear charge is called effective nuclear charge. So Z is nothing but atomic number, nuclear charge. Atomic number means number of proton, nuclear charge. So nuclear charge experienced by the valence electron means we have to omit the shielding effect. Okay. So inner electrons are shielding or screening the attraction between the proton and electron. So when we omit this screening, remaining nuclear charge is called what? Effective nuclear charge. So in definition, we have to say the net nuclear charge experienced by the valence electron is called effective nuclear charge. Mathematically, which is written as effective nuclear charge ZEFF is equal to Z minus S. Z is the atomic number, S is called a screening constant. So shielding effect we said already. Next, how to calculate screening constant. Okay, how to calculate screening constant value? For that we have Slater rule. So Slater's first rule, electronic configuration of that element will be written. After that we have to group the orbitals. Slater's first rule, for every element write the electronic configuration. For example, sodium 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s1. After writing the electronic configuration, you just group the orbitals like this: 1s 2s2p one group, 3s 3p one group, 3d one group, 4s 4p one group. Like this way you group the orbitals in the atom. This is Slater's first rule. Then next, what is the contribution of electron towards screening constant? Because each electron is screening the attraction between the proton and the outermost electron. So how much value is contributed towards screening constant by an electron due to screening? Okay, so now we can take a electron. So in an atom, we can calculate effective nuclear charge for the electron. If the electron is S electron or P electron means a different value. If we select D electron or F electron means value will be different. Okay, so all these are assumptions. So we are going to calculate effective nuclear charge for S electron or P electron means other electrons contributing value will be different. So if you select D electron or F electron means value will be different. So now take an electron. So for an atom we are going to calculate effective nuclear charge for one particular electron. So electron present in that shell is called nth cell. For example, sodium 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s1. If I select the electron in 3s orbital, third cell is called the nth cell. Okay. If I take potassium 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s2 3p6 4s1. So I select electron in 4s orbital. That means fourth cell is nth cell. Okay. So in this way we have to select. So we select one particular electron in an atom. That shell electron present in a cell is called nth cell. Okay. So except the electron chosen, remaining electrons will contribute what value? 0.35. So we select one particular electron in an orbital in a shell. That shell is called the nth cell. Except that electron, remaining electrons in the cell, in the nth cell, will contribute 0.35 as a value towards screening constant. If we select electron in 1s orbital, value is 0.30. Okay, so detailed calculation we completed already, just we revise it. In the nth cell, except the electron chosen, remaining electron will contribute 0.35. If we select 1s orbital means contribution 0.30. Okay. Immediate next inner cell, if we select third cell as nth cell means second cell is called n-1 cell. So electrons in the n-1 cell will contribute 0.85. And the immediate next cell, okay, first cell, it's called n-2. So these are all inner cells. So we select one particular electron in a shell, that shell is called nth cell. Then remaining inner cells are called n-1, n-2, n-3, like that it goes. So n-1 cell the electron in the n minus 1 cell will contribute 0.85, and the inner electrons in the n minus 2, n minus 3, n minus 4 cells will contribute 1. Okay, so if we select d electron, if we select an electron in d orbital or f orbital, means the value will be slightly changed. Okay, so we select one particular d electron or f electron in a cell. That cell is nth cell. So remaining electrons in the nth cell will contribute as usual 0.35. At the same time, immediate next cell, n minus 1 cell, will not contribute 0.85. The electrons in the n minus 1 cell will contribute 1. So this is important one mark. So when we select d electron or f electron, electrons in the n minus 1 cell will contribute what value? 1. Then all other inner cells will contribute as usual 1. So this is called the Slater's rule. Based on the Slater's rule, we calculated effective nuclear charge for the 4s electron and the 3d electron in scandium. 5 more question we completed already. Next, variation of atomic radius in group. In period, left to right atomic radius decreases, but in group top to bottom atomic radius increases, because electrons are added in the next cell. Lithium only 3 electrons, sodium 11 electrons, so extra electrons are added in the next cell. So lithium has only 2 cells, but sodium has 3 cells. So number of cells increased, electrons are added in the next cell, so size automatically increases. So top to bottom electrons are added in the next cell, so atomic size increases. Then screening effect will be predominant because more inner cells are there. So shielding effect or screening effect will be predominant. Effective nuclear charge will be lesser, right? So which will be predominant? Screening effect will be predominant than the effective nuclear charge. So the top to bottom atomic radius increases. So you can observe the graph. In first group, lithium to cesium, size increases. The same way, in the first group, size gradually increases from lithium to cesium. Next, ionic radius. Like atomic radius, we calculate the distance between the center of the nucleus and the valence electron in an ion. It may be cation or anion, whatever it may be. In cation as well as anion, if we calculate the distance between the center of the nucleus and the outermost electron, it's called ionic radius. Ionic radius can be calculated using the Pauling's method. Okay, so we apply the same concepts as we studied in atomic radius. So what is internuclear distance? Internuclear distance is equal to the radius of first atom, radius of second atom. The same concept. Internuclear distance in an ionic compound is equal to radius of cation plus radius of anion. If you take sodium chloride, Na plus Cl minus, between the ions internuclear distance is there. So internuclear distance is equal to radius of cation plus radius of anion. Next, what is the relationship between radius and the effective nuclear charge? Both are inversely proportional. So both are indirectly proportional, isn't it? So left to right, effective nuclear charge increases, radius decreases. Top to bottom in a group, effective nuclear charge decreases, atomic radius increases. So both are inversely proportional. So radius of cation is inversely proportional to the effective nuclear charge of cation. Radius of anion is inversely proportional to the effective nuclear charge of anion. So take the equations 2 and 3, divide the equation 2 by 3, we get this one. Radius of cation divided by radius of anion is equal to effective nuclear charge of anion divided by effective nuclear charge of cation. So using first and fourth formula, you can calculate radius of cation and anion. For that we have studied one problem, a 5-mark problem. Okay. Then next property, atomic radius, ionic radius over. Next property is what? Ionization energy. Okay. So when we take a neutral isolated gaseous atom, this is neutral isolated gaseous atom, we provide energy to remove the electron. So this is called ionization energy. IE represents what? The energy given to remove the loosely bounded electron from an isolated neutral gaseous atom is called ionization energy. So that we get a cation with the liberation of electron. We remove the first electron, so that this is called IE1, first ionization energy. From the cation, if we remove one more electron, we have to provide energy. So this is called the second ionization energy, right? So one more electron is removed from the cation, we get M2 plus cation. From M2 plus cation, one more electron can be removed. It is called IE3. Energy required to remove the third electron from a metal ion. So we have successive ionization energies. IE1 means energy needed to remove first electron. IE2, second ionization energy required to remove an electron from a unipositive cation. IE3, third ionization energy required to remove an electron from bivalent cation. Okay. One more question. Generally, successive ionization potential will be increased. So it is easy to remove an electron from neutral atom, but it is not easy to remove an electron from a cation. Attraction between the proton and electron will be more, so that comparing first, second ionization energy will be more, comparing second, third ionization energy will be more. Then periodic trends. So left to right in a period, ionization potential increases because size decreases, atomic size decreases. It is not easy to remove the last electron from the atom. From lithium to beryllium, when we move, comparing the lithium, beryllium has a smaller size, so attraction will be more, so we have to provide more energy. So left to right, ionization potential increases, but there are some exception cases. Comparing boron, beryllium should have lower value, but comparing boron, beryllium has higher value. Then comparing oxygen, nitrogen should have lesser value. When you take second period, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon. In second period, gradually ionization potential increases. So comparing boron, beryllium should have lower value, right? But beryllium has more value. Comparing oxygen, nitrogen should have lower value, but nitrogen has more value. So this is mainly due to electronic arrangement. So beryllium has completely filled arrangement, nitrogen has half filled arrangement. So due to a stable electronic configuration, half filled and completely filled electronic arrangement is stable. Due to stable electronic arrangement, we need the electron, so that nitrogen and beryllium are having more ionization potential than the immediate next one. Then group, as usual, top to bottom ionization energy decreases because size increases, last electron can be easily removed. Ionization potential decreases from top to bottom. So when we take first group, from lithium to cesium, gradually ionization potential decreases because shielding effect predominant. Top to bottom shielding effect increases, so ionization potential decreases. So both these two terms are inversely proportional. Okay. Then next physical property, electron affinity. Electron affinity means when a neutral isolated gaseous atom accepts an electron, it forms anion with the liberation of energy. So the liberated energy is called electron affinity or electron gain enthalpy. Then variation of electron affinity. As usual, left to right, electron affinity increases. Right? Electron accepting tendency increases from left to right, because all the elements are trying to achieve the electronic configuration of noble gas. So left to right, electron attraction tendency increases, electron affinity increases. Top to bottom, electron affinity decreases because size increases means proton will not attract the electron will. So atomic size or radius increases from top to bottom. So electron affinity decreases from top to bottom. Then some elements are having almost zero electron affinity. Examples, beryllium, nitrogen and noble gases. Beryllium, nitrogen are having stable configuration. Beryllium has completely filled, nitrogen has half filled stable configuration, so it won't accept electron affinity almost zero. Then noble gases are already stable, it won't accept electron, so electron affinity 0. Top to bottom, electron affinity decreases. An exception is there. Top to bottom, generally electron affinity decreases, and two exceptions I have given in our book. One is oxygen and sulfur, another one is fluorine and chlorine. So comparing fluorine, chlorine should have a lower value. Top to bottom, electron affinity has to decrease. But comparing fluorine, chlorine has more value. So this is mainly due to compact structure of a fluorine. One more question. So fluorine has one is 2s 2p orbitals. So when it accepts an electron, when fluorine accepts an electron, it forms F minus. The electron will occupy 2p orbital. So already only 3 orbitals present, very small size. Due to compact size, electron repulsion will be more in fluorine. Okay, but in chlorine, the accepted electron will occupy 3p orbital. So repulsion will be less. So top to bottom electron affinity has to decrease, but exception comparing fluorine, chlorine has more value. This is mainly due to less repulsion in chlorine, more repulsion in fluorine, because electron will occupy 2p orbital. Repulsion will be more due to compact structure. The same concept is applicable for oxygen and sulfur. Comparing oxygen, sulfur should have lower value, but comparing oxygen, sulfur has higher value. Next, last physical property, electronegativity. Okay, so this is the tendency of an atom in a molecule to attract the shared pair of electrons. So after the formation of a covalent molecule, in the covalent bond, one atom may have more electron attraction tendency, so that all the bonded pair of electrons will move towards that atom. So electronegativity is defined as the tendency of an atom in a molecule to attract the shared pair of electrons towards itself. It's called electronegativity, and we follow different scales: Mulliken scale, Pauling scale. So according to Pauling scale, this is the formula. This is the Pauling scale to calculate electronegativity. So XA means electronegativity of atom A, electronegativity of atom B. EAB means bond dissociation energy of AB molecule, bond dissociation energy of A2 molecule, bond dissociation energy of B2 molecule. So according to Pauling scale, electronegativity of hydrogen is 2.1. For fluorine, 4. One more questions. Fluorine is the element with more electronegativity, 4. Like electron affinity, left to right, electronegativity increases. Top to bottom, electronegativity decreases. Next, what is valence? Valence means combining capacity of an element relative to hydrogen. Okay, so an element is combining with how much hydrogen atoms. So combining capacity of an element with respect to hydrogen is called valence, or else valence can be calculated using the number of valence electrons in the outermost cell. So valence means number of valence electrons in the outermost cell, or 8 minus the number of valence electrons. So 3 concepts we may say: combining capacity of an element relative to hydrogen, number of valence electrons in the valence cell, or 8 minus the number of electrons in the outermost cell. So in groups, valence electron same. If you take first group, outermost orbital has only one electron. For hydrogen, 1s1. For lithium, 2s1. Sodium, 3s1. So outermost orbital has one electron. So valence for a group will be same, but in period, valence will be changing, gradually increases. When we take second period, from lithium to neon, valence is gradually increasing, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Next, anomalous properties of second period element. Usually the second period element, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, these are having anomalous nature, different properties comparing the other members in the group. If you take lithium, lithium is in the group number 1. It has to form ionic compound like sodium, potassium, but it forms covalent compound. Beryllium, second period element, like magnesium, calcium in second group, it has to form ionic compound. It forms covalent bond. So like this, second period elements will have different properties. So second period element will have a different valence also. For that, an example is given: aluminum hexafluoride. What is the valence of aluminum? 6, right? So for a second period element, maximum valence 4. So here, boron tetrafluoride anion, BF4 minus, boron tetrafluoride anion. Boron is the second period element, valence 4. For second period element, maximum valence 4. In the same group, this is 13th group. Boron and aluminum are in the 13th group. So what is the valence of aluminum? 6. Okay. So both the elements are in the same group, but different valence. So second period elements are always different from the remaining members in the group. Next, diagonal relationship. So the second and the third period elements are having similar properties when we observe in a diagonal way. So when the elements are placed diagonally, second and third period elements are having similar properties. Lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, second period element. Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, third period element. Lithium and magnesium will have same property diagonally. Beryllium and aluminum will have same property. Boron and silicon will have same property. Diagonally placed elements will have similar property. So this is called a diagonal relationship. Then periodic trends in chemical reactivity, as we discussed already, left to right, non-metallic nature increases, top to bottom, metallic nature increases. So the element which is present in the left hand side are metals, elements which is present in the right hand side of periodic table are non-metals, left to right non-metallic nature increases, top to bottom metallic nature increases. Then the element which is present in the extreme left bottom portion of periodic table is highly electropositive in nature. The element which is present in the extreme right upper portion of periodic table is a non-metallic nature. For example, fluorine is a non-metal. Okay. The element which is present in the extreme left bottom, like cesium, they are highly electropositive in nature. So we can take a metal as well as non-metal, how they are forming the compounds. Take sodium. Sodium is a metal, chlorine is a non-metal. Both are combining with oxygen. It forms sodium oxide and chlorine based oxide. We can check the nature of the oxides by reacting with the water. Sodium oxide is reacting with water. It forms sodium hydroxide. Okay. So when sodium oxide is reacting with water, it forms sodium hydroxide. Then Cl2O7. This oxide is reacting with water, it forms perchloric acid. So sodium oxide provides a base, Cl2O7 provides acid. So the nature will be different. Okay. Next, generally top to bottom, the basicity of hydroxide will increase. Top to bottom in a group, hydroxides, the basicity will increase. So take group number 2. First member, beryllium hydroxide, which is amphoteric in nature. Then calcium hydroxide, weak basic, magnesium hydroxide, weak basic. Basicity increased. When we take hydroxides of alkaline earth metal, basicity increases from top to bottom. So calcium and magnesium hydroxide weakly basic. But last one, barium hydroxide, strongly basic. So basic nature increases. And the first member, beryllium hydroxide, is amphoteric in nature because it can react with both acid as well as base. So it has the property of both acid as well as base. It gives different compounds. So beryllium hydroxide can react with acid to form a salt, so which is basic in nature. Beryllium hydroxide can react with the base because it has acidic nature to provide another salt. With acid, beryllium hydroxide produces beryllium chloride. With the base, sodium hydroxide, beryllium hydroxide produces sodium berylate salt. So beryllium hydroxide is amphoteric in nature. So with this, lesson number 3 over. Thank you.